Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start the Sanhedrin daf Samach Aleph. We are going to begin on Samach Aleph Amud Aleph, about 8 lines from the top. Normally, Rav Acham Adifnu Ravina. Homaydi Kaimer le Rava Bar Rav Chanan Labaye. Regarding that which Rava Bar Rav Chanan said to Abaye, Ema Yatza Hishtachava. He said maybe we should exclude bowing down to an idol. L'alamin al kal kuloi. So the question is, the pasuk says Eichi Yavdu Limutimai, when it says that only services. So what is that coming to exclude? Says Rashi, Ha Mehishtachva Nafka Shemulamta Ala Klal She'enu Chayev El Derech Kibud Kishtachava. We said that you're only chayev when you do something in a honorable way. So, how do we understand this pasuk of Eichi Yavdu? What does that come to exclude? Let's say a person who b'derech mezayin relieves himself to zayvchim. So mehishtachava nafka. We already went out from hishtachava that there is no chiyamisa on this. Ma hishtachava derech kibud avkol derech kibud. So therefore, in this case, you're learning it was derech mezayin. So certainly a person who's poyer atzmo, a person who relieves himself, then he is not going to be chayim midaraisa or chayim misa, because it's not derech kavod. Yuti hapoyer atzmo markolos. Rather, maybe we're talking about a person who relieves himself onto a markolos. Now, markolos is also derech mezayin. We throw stones at it. Now, since the avoda itself is a bezayin, not kol bezayin kamashmon. So maybe you would think that even though it's not the normal way of doing the avoda of markolos by relieving oneself on it, that's for Bal Pa'or, but since markolos, the way that we worship it is also b'derech bezayin, so maybe other forms of bezayin you would also be chayiv. How do we know that a person is not just going to be chayiv by throwing stones at the markolos, but if you bring a carbon, a person is not allowed to bring sacrifices, l'sirim, which is referring to avodah zarah. Now, we don't need the mentioning of this pasuk to tell you that there's a chiyuv if you worship an avodah zarah in its normal way. We already learned this pasuk to tell us. So therefore, tiniu inin l'shlo kedarka. So therefore, the pasuk is telling you that even if you would do the avodah of bringing sacrifices to something which is not normally the way to do this with this particular idol, you're still chayav. So shlo kedarka mishtachva nafka. I thought we learned that out from mishtachva. Here, you're doing it to anger. Apparently means lahachas. Usually means to anger Hashem. Here it may mean to anger the idol. Right? That's how Rashi explains it. Your intention is not to make this into a god. The pasuk is saying that you're over alav in that situation because it was zevech lahachas. So there's a difference if you do again something derech bezayin, or you bring a carbon to a markolos. In that case, takir chayev. However, if it's zevech lahachas, you're not really doing it in order to make it into a god. Rather, you're doing it again. It's derech even as a carbon. Rav Hamnuna irchasule turi. So Rav Hamnuna lost an ox. Pagabe Rabba. I'm not sure what this says. Ramale masnisin ahadadi. And he asked a question. So Rabba encountered it. Okay. And then Ramale masnisin ahadadi. He asked a contradiction between two statements. First of all, Tanan ha'ivin of chachavim, anyone who worships avodah zarah shir chayim misa. Now it's mashma oived in oimer lo. It's only if you actually worship it, not if you said anything. just saying I want to worship an idol, that's not enough to be Chayiv Misa. When in Tanan, Oimer, the person says, Avoid, I'm going to go Elech v'Avoid, Nelech v'Navoid. So he says, I'm going to go and worship. So in that situation, all you did was say something. Nonetheless, you're still going to be Chayiv. So apparently, it doesn't make any difference. Even if you didn't actually worship it, you should be Chayiv. So what is it? Is it only when you worship the idol? Or even if you make a declaration saying, I'm going to worship the idol? So Amalei says a bunch of answers here. This is question 11. Mati rutso al stiras mishnayis deberesha tanan avos chachavim mashma ad shiyavan. You have to worship it. The Seifa says ha'omer, the person who says Evoy, I'm going to worship it. Debamir mischayev. And there's 6 answers to this question. They want us to come up with 4 out of the 6. So let's go through them. So answer number 1. The person says, I'm only going to be Makabal b'shas avoida, which means that really just a mirror is nothing. But if you make the statement that I'm going to go and serve it, and then you actually serve it, then you're going to be Chayiv. That's perhaps how we read that. So let's look in Rashi. So Rashi says, Elba avoida. Says Rashi, Ad shiavdenu, as long as you, only until you actually worship it, the whole kamadoi palachle, as long as you didn't actually worship it, in kan ava, I'm not sure what that word is, v'shama. When it says you're chayiv when you actually only say it, mishakibu alav elohusoi, when you actually make into a god, miyad. Once you say I'm going to worship it, so you accepted it as a god already. Okay, so that's answer number 1. Let's see how he frames it. Reisha, where it's you say what. So normally a mirror would be enough. However, the ratio where it's only at avodah is when you actually said Ein Makabel Alai El Bavoid. I'm only going to accept it at the time of avodah. So what you say thereafter doesn't mean anything because you basically are saying that you're only accepting it b'shas doing the maisa of the avodah zarah. So that's the first answer. Basically, if you stipulate as such, so then it's only b'shas avodah. Otherwise, it's a mirror. Of Yosef Aimer Tanoi shekalt mi'alma Tanoihi. The Tanoim that you took, that you're just taking out, is actually a machlokas Tanoim, the Sanya. Ha'omer, one who says, Ba'o v'avdaini, go and worship me. Notice he's making himself into an idol. Rameir Mechai, Rabbi Yehuda Poiter. So the machlokas. Now, Heicha de Polchu, Kol Yamula Pligi. Where people actually bow down to this guy, then there's no machlokas. Techsiv, Losas Locha Pesel. That you should not make yourself into an idol. So in this situation, you certainly you'd be chayiv. Ki pligi b'dibor ba'alma. It's only with speech. Rameir savar dibor milsi means something. Rehuda savar dibor la milsahi. So we actually see it's a machlokas tanoim whether or not dibor means anything. So hada amar Rabbi Yosef la milsahi. This is nothing. Diarmi diafil Rabbi Yehuda. Even according to the shita of Rabbi Yehuda that says that dibor is nothing, b'dibor nami chiyuv v'mechayev. The truth is, he will still say that you're chayev. After all, the Tanya, the Nan, Rabbi Yehuda oimer oimenu chayev an sheyemer eved lolech v'eved nelech v'navoid. Actually, it's only until you actually make this declaration. So, by Kamifki, b'mesis la'atzmo. We're talking about a person is a mesis that you should worship me. Yarmulei in. And everyone says, yes, I'm going to worship you. So, Kamifli. Marsavar Mesas La'atzmo, when you say, worship me, and the guy says, yes. So, Shamule, they're listening. V'in Dikarmule Kushtahu. They're actually saying, yes, we're really going to worship you. And therefore, they're chayiv. Marsavar Mesas La'atzmo Shmiele. That actually doesn't mean anything. Since Rashi Shari, who Adam Kimaisam. People are going to say they're just like me. There's no difference between them and me. We're the same people. So, like, why would anyone think that this person should actually be an avodah zarah or anything like that? It seems quite preposterous to even contemplate that. So therefore, the fact that they said what they said really means nothing. And why they say yes? So Meimar Amri, they're just kind of like speaking and almost like in jest, but they don't really mean what they're saying. And therefore, for that reason, they're not going to be chayiv. As we continue to Samach Aleph Amud Beis. So Ma'ishna Ihu, why when it comes to Hey, Minan, Didan, the Amri, and again, when they say yes, it's achuchi alei. They're just like laughing at him. They don't really mean that they don't really take to heart what he's saying. Okay, so that's answer number. So we had answer number one. Maybe our Mishnah on the ratio where it says it's only b'shas avoda is dafka in a situation where the person actually makes a statement, says, I'm not going to accept it until the time of the avoda. Otherwise, maybe dibur would be something. And now we're saying that if this, in fact, maybe in taka machlokas among tanoim, which is questionable, because maybe we're actually talking about a situation where a person says, I should be your avodah zarah. Umasnisin kan biyochid hanises, kan barabim hanistim. One is a case where it's an individual. Says Rashi, Masnisin the Kashan Hadadi, Hachim Sukma, Reisha Tani Oivid in Armerlo, it's only the time of the Avoda, is in a situation Biyochid Hanises, by an individual. Kan Barabim Hanistim, says Rashi, they feel Nisratsu Mimluche Vahadribahu, Voito, Hilkach Lul Karinin Bay. Above Shama, the Seifa the Mechayiv, but above Shama b'Yochid Hanises. Kivan Nisratza, Lam Nusel Lam Hedar. So basically, words are even by a Yochid. Mash'en, why? Because Yochid, Lo Mimlech V'Toy Basrei. You're not really going to change, and therefore you're going to accept him. Rabim Mamluche V'Toy Basrei. However, if you're with a group of people, so then in that situation, they may change your mind based on your statement. So if it's by yourself, basically, so then you're going to probably end up worshiping the idol. So even dibur is enough. Let's look at question 11. He says, Reisha barabim seifa biyochid. So again, because it's barabim, the only time you're going to be chayiv is only when you actually do the avodah zarah. How do I know this? The pasuk says, don't go to him, don't listen to him. Ha abba v'shama. Let's say all you did was just listen, amira, chayiv. So how's it shaykh that you're chayiv? Because we're talking about biyachid. You're by yourself. So mishani bein nisas the rabbi nisas yachid. We make such a distinction with Sanya. The pasuk says kisischa chicha ben imecha echad yachid and nisas echad rabim nisim. It shouldn't make any difference. V'hoitze kasav yachid mechlal rabim rab mechlal yachid. So yachid mechlal rabim. Why is it exclude itself yachid from the category of rabim? L'hachmir al gufoi, to be strict on his body. L'hakel mamayno, and to be lenient on his money. So what does that mean? It says Rashi, v'rabim mechal yachid. Let's see the Rashi before that actually. Yachid mechal rabim yelch v'yavo yeduskaltem. V'rabim. Let's finish the Gemara over here. Rabim l'hachmer al gufim l'hakel al mamayno. Rabim mechal yachid l'hakel al gufim l'hachmer al mamayno. So let's look at Rashi. V'rabim mechal yachid lidan b'sayif haketake dir nidachas. When it comes to a nir nidachas, the punishment is sayif. L'achmer mamaynim v'srafta be'esh. Av yachid hakel mamayno shloi gazel level avdai. So when it comes to a yachid, he gets a more chomer misa, but his possessions don't get destroyed. Dir nidachas, it's fakert. So that's the distinction. Baha milsa hu deshani. In that matter, do we make a distinction between someone who's oiv zar by himself, or someone who is in ir nidachas? Regarding everything else, it's the same. So we shouldn't say that when it comes to with a group, so then it's only when you do the avoda zara. But if you're by yourself, it's even ba'amira. Elamar Abaye, kanabenesis mepi atzma, kanabenesis mepi acherim. One is when it's from yourself, mepi atzmo. One is nisis mepi acherim. So mepi atzmo, if it's by your own words, mimuch, you'll change your mind. Mepi acherim gorim basrayu. But if you're with other people, in other words, in the event that you are alone, so maybe you won't listen to them. However, if you're together with a group of people, maybe like through peer pressure, you're going to end up continuing. So therefore, in mir alone, you be chayiv. If you accept it, you're chayiv because you're being influenced by being with a multitude of people. You're with others who are doing this avodah zarah, and they convince you to worship. So whether the masis is praising qualities of the idol, so it's so great, it will bring them to it. But if he doesn't say those things, then it's until they actually worship it. So mal li kroivim mal yerchaikim. What's the difference if it's close or far? Hachin kamer le mativusin shel kroivim, from the goodness of those who are close to it. Atalamad mativusim shel yerchaikim. To see what's the good from those who are far. My love, dear Malay, kach achad, kach shaisa, kach mativa, kach Maria, shema mina. So basically, again, in the situation where the masis is praising the qualities of the idol, so that's so great that it'll bring them to it. Vashi Aimer, here's a couple of the more easy answers. Seifa b'Yisrael mumer. When it comes to the Reisha, we're talking about someone who's Avodah Zara, you're chayiv only do the Avodah. However, we're dealing with a Yisrael Mumer, so he's going to be chayiv even b'shas Amira. That's Rav Ashi's answer. It says Rashi, the b'chayiv b'Amira b'Yisrael Mumer. Givan de kebel ha sul hodabe. He's not going to be trashed. Shahari chufker b'kach. Ravina Omer avzu lozu avzu katani. This is the easiest answer. That it's not really telling us any distinction. It's really the same. That even though the Reisha says oiv and the Sefer says oimer, it's a lozu avzu katani. Klamer v'lo oivid bovad amru el af oimer chayiv. It's not saying that as a contradiction. It's saying that being oivid b'zar is not just doing the avodah, but even the amira alone you be chayiv. Itmar. If you're a person that serves an idol, but they don't do it because they really believe in the idol, they're just scared of their life, you bow down to it. It's only when you actually accept it upon yourself. If you don't, then it doesn't mean anything. Okay, now let's go back to question 11. So how do we answer this teretz? So we know that a couple of the terutzim are very easy, and if they ask you 4, that's not so bad. You can forget the 2 or harder ones. So the first answer, as we said, the ratio it says it's avoda only is because you made a statement that ein makablo alai el ba'avoda. I'm only going to accept it only b'shas avoda. Second answer is reisha b'ram m'seifa b'yachid. It depends if he's being masis many or just one. Reish, which in the Reisha, ba'amira, you're chayiv only ba'avoda, because they can maybe convince you otherwise to stop. Reisha b'nises al pi atzma seim al pi acherim. Fourth answer is Reisha lo emelei kach ochalta, where he doesn't really praise it. Save the emelei kach ocheles, he gives you all these praises about this idol. The fifth answer is the Sefer is Yisrael Mumer, Yisrael even Bamira, or it's Loizu Avzu Katani, that it doesn't make any difference, you're always going to be Chayv. Okay, so those are a lot of answers, and no other questions there. So we just established the machlokes whether or not if a person bows down to Yava Meira, whether you're chayiv. How do I know that you'll be chayiv even Yava Meira? Did not the Mishnah said so my love even if you serve it with not because you really care about this God, this idol rather, but because you do it out of love or fear, you're still chayiv. Lo kimataretz Rabbi Yirmiyah. He'll say rather it's the way that Rabbi Yirmiyah answered this question. What is that? So thank goodness Rashi helps me out. Echad oivid kol avoda shehi darka b'kach. It's telling you no matter what, any avoda which is the normal way, you're chayiv. Also v'echad hamizbach shul kedarka. Also, if you bring sacrifices, which is not the normal way, but it's considered like avodas pnim, okay, that you actually want to worship it, so it's not a raya. Amar by mina minala that taki be potter. Tisanya was the shtach lehem. Don't bow down to them. You can bow down to someone like yourself. You would think, what if maybe you could also bow down to Haman? Don't bow down. Now, Haman havi nevad. Now, Haman miyira havi nevad. So actually, Abaya, what do we see? Again, this is according to the sheet of according to the sheet of Abaye, he says you're chayiv, right? And so we see you're chayiv because like bowing down to Haman, even though it's being done miyira, you don't really believe in this guy. So Rabbi Kahaman v'lo Kahaman. Kahaman di'ihu gufi avodas kachavim. He made himself into an idol. V'lo Kahaman di'ilu Haman miyira. Therefore, you really be potter by bowing down to Haman. V'achala miyira. So really, by Haman, it was done out of fear. So it's interesting, which means that the whole notion of the Purim story, according to this Shita, was not really necessary, maybe, that you couldn't bow down to him, which is an unbelievable ployim, unless you want to say it was b'shas hashmad, and therefore you had to not bow down to him. Okay. So how do I know? Rabbi again is trying to show he's chai miyab miyira. Kohen Mashiach. B'avodas kachavim. So Kohen Mashuach actually is the right language. Says Rashi, Kohen Mashuach b'karben avodas kachavim. Regarding the anointed Kohen, regarding the carbon of avodas kachavim. So Rabbi Omer b'shegeges masa. What is this? Says Rashi, Filu nelu mimenu isra avodas kachavim. Even if it wasn't hidden from them, the Isra Bodas Chachamim elo sheshagim b'maisa, even if he just did b'shageg, he's chayiv. Then the Kohen Mashuach is still chayiv. V'afgav the b'shar mitzvahs and maybe carbon ha'omer lo el imkin nimlu mimenu halacha. When it comes to Kohen Mashuach, it's only when he forgets the halacha. The Ksiv gav ichat asira v'nelam davar, because it says v'nelam davar. So and that's the normal situation. But over here, he's going to be chayiv b'loy helam davar, even without this forgetfulness. Okay, let's go back in the Gemara. So Rabbi Omer b'shkaga ma'isa. Chacham Omer no b'helam davar. It's only if you overlook something. V'shavim shebeseira kiyachid. They agree that the carbon, the one that should be brought, is a she-goat, just like the din of a yachid. With Shavin, then they also agree, shein maybe asham taloi, that we don't bring an asham taloi in this case, says Rashi. Asham loy hodesh shebetayrim mishum negavi asham taloi ksiv ashkagasa sheshagam. Masham misha maybe chatas, someone who brings a carbon chatas al hoida tishkagas maisi maybe asham taloi. You only bring an asham toli when, in the case that it was known that you sinned, then you would have brought a chatos. Yatzim Mashuach Shem Mevi Chatas El Behelm Davar. You don't bring a Chatas rather Helm Davar Shel Tzibor. And therefore, because of that, there's no din Asham Toli when it comes to Par Mashuach Helm Davar Shel Helm Davar. Okay, so they agree with that. The Shavim Shem Mevi Asham Toli. Now, what does that exactly mean? There's a shagig regarding Avodas Kachavim, idol worship. Iksavar Besach Nesasu. If the guy thought that he was in a shul, Vishtach he bowed there, Sahari Limu Shemayim. So his intention was to serve Hashem. El Dechaza and Darta. He saw a statue of a king. Vishtach and he bowed down to it. So it depends. If he accepted this idol as like a god, so Mezidu, it's not Shoigig. How can you call it Shkogus Maisa? As we can hear, Samach Mezim Aleph. Now, if he lo kabel ha, so if he didn't if he didn't accept it as a god, well, Klomu is doing nothing. Elah miyava miyira. Must be that it's miyava miyira, and you're still chayiv. Rabbi Oimer loy beoimer lo beoimer mutter. It's in a situation where Hitaka thought it was mutter to do so, to worship this idol. Oimer mutter hainu helm davar. That's the same thing like you forgot something. So, but oimer mutter legamri. One case is oimer mutter where you don't think there's such a thing as avodah zarah at all. Helm davar is kiyam mixus ubittel mixus. It's a situation where you kept some and you didn't keep some. Says Rashi, going Yeshu was come b'Torah. Helm davar is, you know that there is a concept of avodah zarah in the Torah. Shol boyach, shol kater, not to do certain things. Ela hishtach ve'mutter. You thought bowing down was mutter. So that's the distinction. So one is a case of oimer mutter, where you thought legamri, there's just no din of avodah zarah. And the other one is kiyam mixus ubittel mixus. Question, we're going to stop there. Question 12. Oisim shahayim mishtach ve'mulhaman ve'im hayu chayavim my tirutzim haston bezeh. So one shot is they're potter because it was Mihira. This is a machlokas. Shari Mihiras Hamelach Ishtachlo avoid va'ovid mi'avo Mihira l'bay chayav l'Rabbi Potter. So again, it's a ployim. You think about the whole Purim story based on this sugya. Maybe they were allowed to bow down to him. Okay, it was be Potter of Losser. Okay. Question 13. Koin Mashiach bi'avodas kachavim b'shkagas ma'isa. Divrei Rabbi. How can be a shaygig below Helam Davar be'avodas kachavim? If it's not a case of Helam Davar, so how do we find that? So one is that it was miyavo miyira, and that was your mistake, and you thought that maybe that was okay, but it's your chayiv. Or maybe it's a case of oimer mutter, where you mamish thought it was permissible. Question TA 11. So this we will see in, I think, tomorrow's daf. Okay, so we completely didn't have anything there. Let's look at question 11 very quickly. So that was a film on the in Mechashmin Zerak Asar Sabahema of Inil Chiamisa Ha'ovid Pshita the Chayev. Okay, that we did in yesterday's stuff. Question TB11. Oyisim Shoy Mishtach Lahamanim Hayu Chayav and Mastan Mazeh. Exactly the same question, which is Samach Alpha Beis, which is TB11. Totally b'machlokas by Rabbi imachayev miyava miyira v'zeh b'yira avol haman asas atzmo avodas arad kan.